What's up, everybody?
Everything else
And
can
welcome
wait,
to episode
especially
3
now
of
that
1
you can get
versus
a
1.
hamburger for
I think I've got
69
something
cents
playing in
or
the
a
background.
cheeseburger
Hold
for
on.
89 cents. More temptation to love.
Vegas, Vegas, McDonald's, McDonald's.
There we go. Sorry about that. And we're here with HiRezBart from HiRez Studios, and he's the esports manager for HiRez. Is that correct, Bart?
It is indeed, yes.
Wonderful. And if you guys have been following Smite, you probably have seen him around. I'm sure he's been around in other games like Tribes and other things before, right?
That is correct, yes.
So what we're going to do today...
Tribes.
Yeah. What we're going to do today is just get to know Bart a little bit better, talk about where he, how he started in the business, what he does for HiRez, things like that, and then we're going to get into an open discussion about where we see the future of esports lying, what things could detour it from its current track, what things could make it even better in the future. So we'll just get started. So where are you from, Bart?
I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, by way of South Florida. I was born in Miami, and family moved up here when I was just a little kid, I think like 3 or 4, and I've lived in Atlanta ever since, north end of the city.
Right on. And what got you into gaming?
I have an older brother, about 3 years older than me, and so, I mean, during my very early years when I was playing games, it was purely because my brother was. Beyond that, it was just kind of always something that resonated with me or that I really enjoyed over, I played sports and board games as well, but really always enjoyed video gaming.
And so your older brother was kind of that influence that got you into gaming?
Yeah, I think that, it was something that we did together, certainly. I certainly wouldn't have gotten into gaming as early as I did had I not had an older brother, because I wouldn't have known that that's something that I wanted. But I don't know, that it wasn't like he was like, some kind of semi-professional or like, really highly competitive PC gamer playing Quake. It was like, you have to play, little brother. It was more like, hey, let's play Super Mario Brothers together because it's 2-player.
Right on. Super Mario Brothers was a great game from back then. So what was the first game that you can even remember playing with your brother?
First game I can remember playing is probably, like, most iconically would be just the original Mario for NES, Super Mario. Or not the original Mario, but Super Mario. That's probably the first game that I can really distinctly remember playing. Outside of like Breakout on a Mac way back when I still lived in Florida, I have like a vague memory of that. But I was like only 3 or 4 years old, so I'll go with Mario on NES.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think Mario is probably one of the more iconic games that everybody kind of remembers, and I'm sure that everybody from that era has played it, and I'm certainly around your age, it was probably one of the very first games that you played.
Absolutely.
So what is your favorite game of all time?
On consoles, it would be Super Nintendo's Knights of the Round, which is also an arcade game made by Capcom. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up set in King Arthur's world, in the Arthurian legend kind of world, which I really enjoyed. That kind of mythos as a kid, and the game is also really fun, and I really enjoy it. It's quite challenging, so all around a good one. On PCs, it's Star Siege Tribes, the original Tribes game from '98.
Tribes, yes. I loved Tribes. The very first one was amazing. Even though, the Tribes Ascend still is great in its own, I think that Tribes around that time was just so new to everybody. It was beautiful.
Yeah, what it did then, it was one of the first games that just was like, yeah, there is no single player part of this game.
Absolutely, exactly. So what made you want to get into the gaming world? Like, what made you want to start doing what you do?
Well, it's kind of two things, right? Like, I have a business degree in marketing, so I didn't really ever see myself working in gaming. It was something I always wanted to do, certainly. I mean, it was definitely like, I was more of the mindset of like, maybe someday I can get good enough or well-known enough in the marketing world or in my company that I can work on an account that's for a gaming company or something like that, or work in a marketing department for a gaming company, was kind of what I was thinking. So, but that was kind of a pipe dream. What got me more into the shoutcasting stuff was watching Honcast and Breaking CPK a lot. I kind of, understood that there was this thing called esports, and, I'd watched some StarCraft I had some friends, as I was growing up in high school and into college, we're watching Brood War, the Korean Brood War broadcasts on like OGN and stuff. So, I had a pretty good understanding of what was going on out there, and I knew about, kind of like DJ Wheat and Scoots and Live on 3 and kind of a lot of the big premiere stuff. But it was really in playing Here's a New Earth and watching Breaky that I got passionate about it, I guess, or wanted to try to do it myself. So I started uploading broadcasts that me and my brother had done onto Game Replays, which was, I think that website's still up, but they just hosted basically video files of people shoutcasting games. So we did a couple just like casually, and that was something that I put on my resume when I applied to HiRez in the marketing department.
Right on. So it seemed to work out for you. And so what exactly do you do for HiRez?
Well, right now, what I do, and it tends to change. It's a pretty fluid company. I mean, we're pretty small and we're growing, and et cetera, et cetera. So when I started, I was a marketing analyst doing business strategy and marketing strategy based on website traffic and Google Analytics and analysis at all kind of around that. I did the initial pricing for Global Agenda when we went free to play. So some minor amount of price elasticity analysis and just kind of like general low level for a business degree economic stuff and analysis stuff into the marketing analysis was really where my skill set was. Because out of college, I worked for a couple of years for like a small like 6-person marketing company that, we were like a boutique basically. We were dealing with, huge accounts. This is a little tiny house. And so I really got my chops there in terms of the analysis side of it. Started doing that for HiRez, and then when Tribes came out, my resume is basically like, here's the skill set I have. I'm really passionate about this game this IP you just bought, which was Tribes, and I also can do some shoutcasting stuff. I've done it before. That was pretty much my value pitch to them, and it was enough to get me an interview. Interview got me the job. Started working in the marketing. Started working with Global Agenda a little bit in the community side of it, but mostly through the pricing of the cash shop, and then with Tribes, I kind of knew how to talk the talk with the Tribes players, and the game's just so old. There's a lot of very veteran players that had very strong opinions and were kind of scaring off new people. And so I kind of pitched the idea of a competitive and esports forum on our forums, and was able to basically have them start talking about some theoretical pro mod for the game that would make it more fun for them instead of just like why this game sucks, my manifesto over and over again in the forums from each one. And that begot teams. Teams begot the desire to play each other. That made this whitelisting system, which allowed them to play each other on servers that you had to have special access to, and then on and on and on and on until, kind of culmination was the NASL Season 3 finals for Tribes, and up to the present.
Wonderful. Yeah, you guys have done a really excellent job with and with just the 3 games that you guys have come out with so far, and being that Tribes, it was such a kind of a niche game, the exposure that the game has gotten is very impressive. I come from a long line of different FPSs, and Tribes is one of the first, like you were saying in the beginning, was one of the first just kind of, you had to play multiplayer if you were going to play that game. You guys took that and you ran with it with this other version of it, and I really love it. But it is one of those niche games because it has such a high skill floor that not everybody can play that game.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's a really good way to put it as well. It's not so much that there's the learning curve is fairly steep, but it's really just the baseline knowledge you need to play it is pretty daunting for kind of the way gamers are conditioned these days. And in 1998, it wasn't that big of a deal. Every game was just like, wait, what? Because like 3D graphics and like, persistent worlds and all this kind of stuff was all just so new that every game you kind of expected to come in and have to get your bearings. Now it's like, I can't sprint, what do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got 2 more questions that are pretty hard, and then we'll get into the open discussion. I don't know how much you can actually answer these questions, but I'm going to ask them anyway. So what can we expect in the future for Smite? Is there anything that you can give us on some of the new gods that are coming out?
Any glimpse of? Okay. No, nothing specifically about content that I can really talk about. I can kind of speculate more about the future of kind of competition in esports, because that's what I'm most closely involved with. So I kind of know what's kosher to say and what's not. or what I can even provide, a glimpse into the future. We have a $100,000 tournament that's kind of floating in the future right now that I can't give you a hard date for. But that was announced a couple months ago, and so we will be hosting a $100,000 invitational for the top Smite teams. It will be a land-based event as well. So that's about as much detail as I know or can go into on that specifically. I know that with the $1,000 weeklies that we do, we're looking to do or have plans to do additional $10,000 events, the style of what was done at PAX East, at perhaps PAX Prime or other events that we may or may not be attending, which of course will be announced when the time is right. But and I would expect that relatively shortly, over the next couple of months, we'll be transitioning out of the kind of weekly style of tournaments into something maybe with a little bit more longevity, maybe monthly finals, quarterly finals, these types of things. Once we kind of figure out, we're still really growing the idea of hosting our own tournaments. So the weeklies are a good way for us to be really agile and very iterative on how things are run and how the rule set works and what teams are, and to condition teams to have expectations. One of the things that we're really looking at is, specifically with teams and payment is, once you start talking about, once the money gets over a certain threshold, it starts becoming like this is their job and we need to, there's things that they need to do, the team captains need to be aware of and used to doing so that they don't get, crushed by the IRS basically. So part of this is just going through all those learning pains, and then, but I would say that, the sneak peek is that we certainly do have, intentions to expand this thing beyond just weeklies that are one-offs.
So let me expand on that further. When you do have Smite launched, are there any leagues that you guys are looking at working with to run other kind of tournaments outside of just having your own?
Specifically third-party leagues then? You mean like major ones, MLG and ASL, that type of thing?
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a specific plan in place. Certainly not one that I can discuss or speculate on publicly.
Okay.
But I know for the moment we're focusing on trying to make sure that what we're providing in terms of a background for the competitive scene is really strong, and we feel like growing the scene as a whole is more important right now than appeasing third-party sponsorship. Well, rather more than necessarily being part of a major league at this moment. It's more important to get more people playing, streaming, and watching the game. And so you can tell, a lot of things we do are very focused on that. Running 2 24-hour channels, integrating Twitch streaming into the game client, providing giveaways for streamers, outside of who we just specifically have on our channels. A lot of things, to just kind of promote the game as a whole, and the viewership aspect of it certainly. So I don't know that that's something that is super high priority right now, but I'm not going to say that we haven't thought about it or talked with them or anything like that. I can't really confirm or deny that, but I don't have an announcement for you today, I guess is the best way to answer that.
Fair enough. Well, I do have one more question, and I don't know if you'll even be able to answer it, but we know that you guys are really heavy into Smite right now. You guys are always still supporting tribes. Is there any hope for Global Agenda to come back? I know that you guys had a poll coming out a while ago that was asking what direction you would like to see a Global Agenda 2 go, and I think an overwhelming voice said that if you had to streamline it one way or the other, be it a PvE game or a PvP game, what would you like to see it? And I think everybody kind of screamed out that they would want it to be a PvP game. Is there anything that you could give me on that? Is that in development? Is that something you guys were just kind of tossing around?
I think that there's a forum post from our CEO that kind of talks about this. Beta by a certain date, like that's pretty soon, or maybe even already passed. But that it's definitely something I can't really say whether we are or not developing that game. It would be very much against company policy to do so. But I can tell you that that there has been things said publicly about it by my executives, and unfortunately at this point I have to kind of just defer to those because I have really no idea what is their intention for public knowledge around any development that may or may not be going on with a continuation of the Global Agenda franchise.
Man, I would really love to see that. I'm a big fan of Global Agenda. I'm a big fan of HiRez to begin with, but Global Agenda was one of those games that was just so cool. But you guys had such a vision that it fell short in a lot of people's eyes because it was so spread. And I think that if you streamlined it and just did the PvP, man, it would be a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that's in retrospect, I wasn't part of the studio when they made that game, but in retrospect, I think a lot of people feel, internally and externally that it was just a little too wide. It didn't go deep enough in some of the verticals. It had too much horizontalness to it. You kind of got in the game and you're like, there's so much to do, and then realize that, only really a few of those things had a lot of depth to them. So I think everyone recognizes the need for more of a streamlined, maybe just lobby-based PvP excitement game. So I wouldn't at all be surprised if there is a global agenda 2, that it would be similar to that, more of a streamlined process, less of an MMO. So, but we'll see. Certainly, there's nothing I can really firmly comment on.
Right on.
But in sentiment, I certainly agree with you.
Well, hopefully we'll see something. We'll be looking forward to that and hearing more from about that. So I think that's all the questions I have specifically for you. I think we'll just go into our general discussion about the future of esports. And I'll start it off with, there is a recent announcement about the Xbox One. And some of the features of the Xbox One are really interesting. They're talking about it being the whole home entertainment, but they're also not making it backwards compatible. And I don't know if that's going to be good for esports as far as console gaming is concerned, because that's basically making you go out and buy a new console to be able to play some of the games that are already pretty popular. So does that mean that these consoles are just going to kind of be there for people to buy because it's the newest thing? And then, the people that are already stuck into their game, are there still going to be support for like Gears of War 3 and Black Ops 2 and stuff like that? Where do you see that being a detriment or a positive thing for esports right now?
And this was specifically kind of console esports, which is a little bit of a different story, I think, than PC based esports titles. I mean, in general, that market's smaller, I think. Call of Duty's been doing really well recently with kind of the riding the wave of the $1 million event that they had, and certainly happy to see that scene growing. When you talk about like traditionally really strong FPS on consoles, you're basically talking about Halo, and then kind of later Gears of War, and then later still Call of Duty, specifically on console in terms of the size of the scene. I don't know. It's hard to say whether or not there will be a real effect of backwards compatibility not being available for those titles on Xbox One. I mean, it's not like you had Halo 1 leagues, that were being played on Xbox 360. I believe that was one of the backwards compatible titles as well, or Halo 2 for that matter. So I think that to a certain extent that it's not going to hurt the scene that much. It'll certainly hurt the players or the community, but in terms of like prize pools and what's available to you as a professional player, the publisher or the developer is going to support their new title. Black Ops 3 comes out, there's not going to be big Black Ops 2 prize pools that are put up by Activision or by 343 or by Infinity Ward or whichever, developer publisher combo that makes the next kind of Call of Duty action FPS game. It's that they're developing it on a new platform, and the new platform has a lot more visibility into the game. So theoretically, they would be able to invest more into the prize pool because they would have better ROI based on the visibility that the game gets. So if it delivers on what they want it to, it sounds like, which is that it's more of an entertainment station, and that there's tons more people watching Call of Duty 8 instead of Call of Duty 7, and you can't play Call of Duty 7 on Xbox One, it's still worth your time as a gamer or someone that's looking to compete because there's more pie available. So it's always bad it's always bad when companies aren't consumer first, I think. But it's a business at the end of the day, and piracy is just too big of a problem. And if we want to continue to have games, they have to do kind of not necessarily the most kosher things to make sure that they at least protect some of their ROI from piracy.
Makes sense. So leads me on to my next thing, though, is specifically console FPS gaming, because we've seen a lack of FPS games for PC gaming. It's PC gaming and esports has kind of fallen short in the recent years with Quake falling off, and Tribes has kind of tried to fuel that. But Shoot Mania and Tribes really are the only right now the only FPS games out there that are doing really well. Quake has kind of started to fall off really well, bad. Um, so in terms of console esports, do you think that having a new Call of Duty game every 6 to 8 months or a new Battlefield game every 6 to 8 months is healthy for that genre? Is it doing better for them, or are they pushing them out just for the sheer product value of it and making money off of the name?
Well, I think that there's we're kind of not talking about the two big elephants in the room with PC FPS gaming. There's CS:GO, which is fairly strongly supported by Valve and has a very dedicated scene certainly, and with recent issues with ESEA, the kind of league structure has fallen off a little bit there. But you have I believe Sturmy is working on a project called Face It that a lot of people I know are pretty excited about, and there's that, and then there's also Crossfire, which is just this. I don't know if you're aware of Crossfire, but it's absurdly successful in China. It's one of those. It's a Korean developed game that's published by the Chinese. It's the one of the most played games in the world and is an extremely successful FPS in China and Brazil. It's basically a Counter-Strike clone and has a lot of random chance as part of it, like a lot of bullet spread. So it's just that the American and European FPS scene has fallen off so steeply because of console gaming. PC gaming has started to die now. With the product life cycles of the Call of Duty games, I mean, it's just Madden. It's really no different. You look at, and has that been successful for Madden esports? Well, that hasn't ever really been a concern for them. I mean, they do the kind of one-off little like be the next Madden bro or whatever they do, those TV shows, that are what they are. But I think that the model is not about promoting a successful esports scene. The model is about making money, and they are doing very, very well there. And you just have to hope as a gamer that their community team and somewhere high enough someone believes in esports or believes in community outreach, and they want to turn some of that profit that we give them into reaching back out to those players and really wanting them. Like one of the big things for our company and for HiRez, our CEO, and esports with Smite is that like we put the money up because we want the players that invest all this time to get, we want them to be able to make money off of it. It's not because we want and so we can see it played at that level and they can play it at that level and people can enjoy it. I mean, the whole thing, right? It's all community outreach. It's not really there's no real true ROI in small developer esports investment. It's a part of marketing. And we just happen to really like it and be really passionate about it. But for a company like Activision, it's probably run just at a loss just because. And in the same way, it just feels like they do it on such a smaller scale, I guess, because they're so big that you're like, man, they could do so much with all this money. But they really, I think, put quite a bit into it. And they make their nut off of having a new Call of Duty every year. And you can't really hate on them for it. You can just, you just have to kind of come to terms with the fact that that is the world that was created by the consumers, which was that piracy forced free to play and kind of online and then always on DRM onto the developers. I don't think that that's something that necessarily would have come to had that not been an issue.
I think I can agree with that. So
you reap what you sow, kind of. It's just like you wanted to pirate games for 6 years and taunt everybody and break through all their DRM, and now they're going to go, okay, well, we're gonna do Sony to you. You want a soft mod? We're going to brick your PlayStation. It's the same thing. They're just making it no longer like something they did in the dark. That's going to be up front now. It's just going to be like, look, we aren't going to tolerate softer hard modding of our consoles. We're not going to accept people playing our games forever in LAN because we had LAN. We're not going to accept people using websites and services like Tungle to play our games over the internet just because they have LAN functionalities. That's why you see no LAN functionality. You see DRM. They got to make their money somewhere. It sucks, but it's the truth.
Yeah, when you look at it from a corporate standpoint, you've got to make your money somewhere, and especially when you're outputting, that kind of money when they're running a $1 million series, things like that have to come somewhere.
And you can look at Microsoft a little bit too. I mean, Xbox and PlayStation in the last generation didn't support free to play, straight up. Like on Xbox Live and the PlayStation Network platform for purchasing, like you couldn't do free to play. They would just basically like take you to the cleaners in terms of like the updates. They'd be like, oh, you want to update all your clients out there? It's $100,000, right, or something like that. That's obviously funny numbers, but like it's the consoles are a generation behind, not only in hardware but also in kind of the business models that PC's been able to adopt, specifically free to play, and that's why you kind of have these year over year releases, and you have these online DRMs, and you have these very very aggressive kind of like wealth IP management scenarios for them, where they're just like, we have to guard these things so closely and keep them so locked down, because if we don't, we'll have a Dota issue on our hands where it's like Dota 1 is still being played because Warcraft 3 had, LAN functionality, and everyone just pirated Warcraft 3, and all these LAN centers just have Dota, and they play them on their own networks, in GSEA or whatever in Southeast Asia. So Garena and all that kind of stuff. It's just very challenging, I think, with the sophistication of the average user now, especially in PC gaming, around what it can, like, highly sophisticated ways to pirate stuff and play games for free. That free to play just is so easy, makes so much sense, and consoles just don't have that, and so they have to come up with other things.
That makes a lot of sense. So in terms of PC esports, where do you see it going within the next year? And where do you see Smite playing a role in that?
I think it's really encouraging that MOBA continues to grow. Dota 2 is really starting to take off around the international 3, but their numbers are steadily increasing. I mean, they're reporting like 90K watching in the on Twitch between the Russian and the English stream. So, they're getting League of Legends numbers theoretically, but it hasn't really been like a hard viewer count on Twitch yet, which I think is kind of the watermark for a lot of people, at least, more kind of like casual consumers of like, what's the new cool thing? So I think that it's exciting that MOBA is trending that popularly, and Smite certainly brings, a different aspect of it to the table, and I think the game is a strong game. I think it has all of the pieces that it needs to be a competitive game. I mean, it has PvP play, and there's certainly enough depth to it that there can be a discernible difference in skill between a very good and very bad player, and kind of those are like really all you need to have an esport. And then you need a player base, you need people that are excited about it, and you need broadcasters, and you need spectator clients, and you need to have good information display, and then it goes on and all these secondary things. But at the core, it's players versus players. It's not just like an online leaderboard, and there's enough skill requirement to make it interesting to have good and bad players. So I expect that the future of Smite will continue to grow. I mean, we're still really, really new with this game. We're about a year into it. In fact, the year anniversary of closed beta was about 3 days ago. So we're getting there. It's definitely something that I'm feeling very optimistic about.
Yeah, I know all of us here at Vexx are really excited about Smite. I've been actually in the beta since the beginning. I just realized that the other day when I saw the year anniversary. I was like, wow, I have been playing this game for a long time now. But it's been really wild watching everything kind of progress and the changes that have been made, and from 1 lane to 3 lanes and all the different things that have been changed. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, Smite definitely has come a very, very long way since inception. I mean, we were playing the game, obviously, I think around the time that we had like 6 or 7 different gods in there. So it's definitely come really, really far from there. I mean, when you think about the original gods that are free, and then like I think Bastet and maybe one other were included at that point. I mean, it was just like the gameplay was fun then, but it was you had a lot of just kind of like, yeah, you kind of just throw all your spells. You think about those gods; they're all very big burst AOE style, just kind of like gods. And then we started experimenting more and more. It really turned the corner kind of in development with Hell. Hell was a very high concept and worked out really well. And then once kind of like Guan Yu got in and Hades, and you had all these options for tanks, it really started getting really interesting. And then once the side jungles went away and you had more more of an action based kind of game, we decided that was a little bit better. And a lot of tinkering with the buffs and how they worked. And now, now in this last week, we've seen, kind of jungling make its mark, and the Bumpus mask becoming a very popular item. And in fact, I'm watching the finals here on my second monitor, just kind of in the background. I look over, and there's a Thor here, with the jungling item. So I assume here that we've had Proxy QQ jungle as Thor for E-Lemon. So I mean, there's just a lot of, watching the meta shift is always something that's really awesome. It's kind of like, and raising a child is kind of what it's like to work on a competitive title and watch the teams shift the meta around.
Yeah, it is really crazy, and especially with all the new things coming out, and then the balance changes. You see new things every week on on the tournament, which is really exciting. And I'm really looking forward to when all the gods are released, just to see what happens and what changes are going to happen each week.
Yeah, one of the best parts certainly about being involved with any new and burgeoning community.
So I got one last question, and that's where do you see FPS games playing in to esports in the future? Like, what does the FPS genre need to kind of keep it going and push it into North American esports?
It's interesting. Like Western Hemisphere, for FPS has always been like it's always kind of an interesting thing. Like the European teams traditionally in esports have a lot better teamwork, and the NA teams tend to have a little bit better mechanical capabilities. Like you'll have these kind of like crazy stars in NA that are just so good at the game, but they get beat by these European teams just because they have a little bit more going on in terms of their strategy and their team play. So specifically for NA, I think that you really kind of have to peak in the zenith of it with Fatality and Quake, in terms of like household name and recognition. So what's the future for them? I mean, you have games like Firefall and more kind of appropriately Shootmania. Shootmania was kind of like 100% all in on esports, and it's not really that successful as far as I understand it right now. I know that Ubi certainly has a lot of money, a lot of funding, and a lot of passion around Shootmania, and I know it does fairly well. I was at the Paris Games Week event. Shootmania did very well there. They had, and you have major teams involved. Dignitas, comes to mind immediately with Shootmania, and I think that I hope that FPS continues to grow, but I don't see any of the titles that are out right now or really in development, like notably like Firefall, really changing the name of the game when it comes to FPS esports. I think that it's like anything, that it's going to be when it comes to competitive gaming, the Asian markets are going to dictate where that moves. And right now, Crossfire seems to be really, really, really popular. But similar titles in the States and in North America haven't really done that well. I think like Offensive Combat's fairly similar in terms of and the game that Zombie made just recently. Team X and these kind of games that incorporate more and more of that, which seems like random chance. And more weapon spread is getting more and more popular in terms of FPS. So I would expect to see maybe more of that. It's basically gonna be like it felt like to be. I imagine to be an FPS gamer right now, it's gonna feel like what it felt to be a hardcore MOBA player in like 2003 when League of Legends started getting popular. 2000. Oh no, I'm sorry, like 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009. We start hearing about it, and then it gets wildly popular in like 2009, 2010. Where you're kind of, it's going to be a game that I think that feels really, really casual and like it has all this RNG and it's not a skill-based game. And then, which is kind of what League of Legends seemed like to someone coming from a Dota background. I was like, this is like cartoon Dota for children. But, and I think that's what you're going to see with FPS as well. And then one of these games is just going to go nuts, and it's going to be on the back of a free-to-play monetization model, a lot of customization, and a lot of variance in terms of skill probably, where really, really great players will still be really, really great and they'll be very high tier, but similar to League of Legends and other good free-to-play games, the medium to low players don't have a tremendous disparity between them because the new players will still get some kills and some things based on just pure RNG, and that would be my speculation or forecast for what you'll see really do well as an FPS title in the next 10 years.
I think I can agree with you. I see FPS games adapting that MOBA kind of thing, especially with their classes. Um, you mentioned Firefall. Firefall is something that I myself have been pretty heavily invested in. I really like the game. I think that it's got a really good direction that it's going, and they've recently done kind of like the League of Legends kind of ultimate things with their characters, where um, over time doing damage and taking damage as your character builds up your HKM meter, very similar to your ultimate meter in other games like that. And then
Sounds kind of like the boost meter in Global Agenda.
and then it releases an ultimate ability that's specific to that class. And each of these classes kind of have another ability that caters to it specifically. So I'll give an example. The Tiger Claw is one of the assault frames, and its ultimate ability is a tether field. Basically shoots an AoE ball at the ground, and anything within this AoE ball, basically, if it leaves the AoE ball, it instantly takes 1,000 damage. So it's forcing anything that's in there to stay in that ball. And then the biomedic, I think it's the Accord biomedic, has an ultimate ability that just basically throws out a poison aura right out in front of it, and it just destroys everything. So you can contain it and then destroy it, and they work in tandem. And so they're kind of taking that League of Legends ultimate ability into the fast-paced arena game. And I think that is what you're going to see do well in these next generation FPS games.
Yeah, it's gonna be some kind of better, more like Skinner boxy achievement. Like how Call of Duty works with achievements, and I mean Call of Duty really has this exact model we're talking about, and they do it really, really well. They just don't have the free to play aspect of it. And once someone figures that out and does it in a way that is interesting and really engaging for the consumers, the Call of Duty model is really strong. I mean, that you unlock the guns you can unlock skins. There's all these achievements, all these little things that you can do and achieve. And you're constantly getting every time you play a Call of Duty game, the first 100 games you play, you're getting 7, 8 achievements, and that feels really good as a gamer. So it's just kind of putting all those things together, I think, and it's coming. But I don't know that it's anything that's kind of currently out there now. We'll see. I know Firefall does a really good job, or at least what they kind of showed of their spectator client looked really, really, really good. So hopefully it'll be enough that FPS is a little bit behind the 8 ball when it comes to providing a spectator experience. It doesn't suck, and it always has been. It's just very hard to do it well. Because everyone, all the players that play the game want to see the first-person view of the players so that they know what they're doing. But if you don't play the game and you want to watch it as a spectator, it's very, very hard to understand what's going on from toggling FPS cameras. So I don't know the answer there certainly, but I think that someone will figure it out in waxes and wanes, and you're just in a little bit of a valley right now. But the peak is going to come again for one of these FPS titles. Is going to just go, it's going to go very, very well, I'm sure, for some lucky publisher and development studio.
I agree with you there. Let's hope it comes soon. All right, I think we're gonna ask one more question or two more questions from our viewers, and I think that Izeve asked a question and said, "Can you possibly tell us the process of the 100K Invitational and what it would look like? What would their qualifications for the tournament be? So is that going to be based off of like your weekly tournaments and the placing for that?"
That's kind of the when I was alluding to, the idea of there being maybe more monthly or quarterly based things. I think that those kind of things go part and parcel. Like we'll eventually figure out exactly what we want to do with the more or less one-off style of tournaments, and then I don't think it would be fair to then retroactively be like, and we're going to look at all of your weekly tournament events that we didn't tell you what these are actually for, and that's going to determine your seeding. It'll probably be something more like it's clear, relatively clear. Who the top couple teams are in each scene. At least, certainly you can make a strong top 3, top 4 pretty easily. And then probably some amount of invitation and maybe an open qualifier for a few of the spots remaining would be my guess, but that's definitely not something that is I'm saying with any kind of confidence. It's still pretty up in the air. I don't want to commit to anything right now. I mean, we're definitely working on it, but I can't commit to anything right now that it's definitely going to go through that way. But I think you can expect something. There will be some amount of invitation, some amount of qualification.
Wonderful. and I think everybody is looking forward to that. And I think the last question was, can you give us any idea of what the next god is going to mechanically be like? Is it going to be a magical tank? I think is the rumor. Is there anything you can confirm?
Athena?
Yes, Athena.
Yeah. Yeah, she'll be a magical tank. It'll probably be a little bit more like a bruiser style. She's gonna have really, really good peel. Probably going to be one of the stronger kind of gods you can match with a very squishy, very hard carry style. I think she'll be very good at defending certain gods in a peel sense, similar to how you would match Sobek with a god. But she will have, I think a very strong presence around the map as well. She has some tools that allow her to get around the map, and I can't really go into much more detail whether or not that's speed or blinking or whatever it is, but she does have the tools to kind of get around the map and help the carries out, and is a defensive based god, but does have some pretty nice tools to deal magical burst if she gets the opportunity.
Sounds very interesting. I think we're all looking forward to seeing that, and I think that's pretty much all I've got for you, Bart. I thank you for coming on here and sharing everything with us today.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
And thanks all you guys for watching. We'll probably be back in 2 weeks with another guest, and I'm going to run the outro. You guys have a good day.